Hi. Thank you for joining the Releading podcast. And this is a place where you come when you need to pause in your career or on your timeline, on your journey, and you want to pivot because you want to do something different so that you proceed with purpose and that you're doing it a little bit differently and in a way that fortifies you. So today, I'm going to be introducing right now my very special guest. And everyone, please welcome Charles Feltman. Charles is the author of the best-selling book. It is called The Thin Book of Trust, an essential primer for building trust at work, with over 100,000 copies sold. So welcome, Charles.
Thank you, Kim. It's nice to be here.
Great. So what I'm going to do, I like to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to talk a little bit about your background, just a little bit, because I really want the audience to get to know about you and then get to know some interesting and fun things about you. And then we're going to dive into everything. Oops. I need to turn off my phone. And it happens. And that way we can talk a lot more about your book and why it's so important for everyone to not only know that it exists, that they haven't read it yet, but why they need to read the latest edition of that. So first, let me talk a little bit about your background. I think it's really interesting for people to know that you have an academic degree in cognitive psychology from University of California, Santa Cruz, and a master's in communication management from University of Southern California. Is it safe to say that you're a California person?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah? Born and raised?
No, I was born in Scottsdale or Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
And didn't move to California until I was 10. So
Okay.
my family moved at that point. And so from then on, I'm a Californian.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. So for almost 30 years, and correct me on that if it's longer than that, Charles, that you are the owner and the principal of Insight Coaching since 1997. You're an executive coach, providing high impact strategic and transformational coaching. I love that. You've been doing it for a long time.
I have, yes. It always amazes me when I kind of take a look at the number of years that I've been doing. Wow, I've been doing this for a while.
You have. I remember back in 1997. I don't even remember hearing anything about executive coaching. I think it's more of a career path that's become more popular in more recent years than decades ago. So you're really something there doing that. And then you had a book on top of that. Okay, so again, congratulations on the upcoming third book of The Thin Book of Trust. And so what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about Charles, the human being. We're going to know a lot more about you as Charles, the author. So when we now know you, that you're an author, that you're a business owner of a very successful company, and of course, a very successful book. And what is something, I'm going to ask you two questions. What is something that we need to know about Charles Feltman? And what is something nice to know about Charles Feltman?
Gosh, the first one, it kind of stumps me. I don't know if there's anything that anybody needs to know about me,
Okay.
unless of course we're going to actually work together for some reason, in which case I guess would be useful for someone to know that I'm an introvert. So I tend to, I tend to hang back a little bit. But if I'm coaching, I'm very much present with whoever I'm coaching or working with. I'm working with a team, the same, and that I collaborate. I partner with whatever client I'm working with, so that it's not me out in front, leading the parade. I'm helping them lead their own parade.
That's great. Okay. Anything else that we should know?
Should know, probably.
What's nice to know?
What's nice to know? Let's see. Well, I'm, like you said, I'm a Californian for the most part. I live in what's an area called the Central Coast of California. The town is San Luis Obispo, which is about halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco. Nice little town with a university, so we've got culture. I'm married. I have 2 children from a first marriage who are in their late 40s, early 50s, and a 20-year-old son. Yeah, I love life. I can't say much else about that. So I'll just stop there.
Well, actually, that's really interesting. One thing I found so interesting, the first thing that you said is that you're an introvert. And that information for me is always important to know, especially when I'm coaching. The first question I ask anyone is unscientific, but I will ask them, are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? Because then I know exactly how to coach them. And I know exactly what to do with them because of their personality type. And if they're not sure if they're an introvert or extrovert, I'll have some questions for them that really hones in on that. So I always thought that you were an introvert, but I've also seen you in action on a webinar, and you're fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, of course, as anyone who's actually studied these or used these distinctions, introvert, extrovert,
Yes.
know full well that an introvert can easily talk to people and
Yes.
move in the world of people, and at the same time, sort of we need to kind of step back sometimes and just chill. Whereas extroverts, of course, can be alone and can be introspective, and really need often to be with other people and be part of a group. So.
Wow, that's so true. It's almost like you read my book and are talking about the one chapter. That information is actually really true. And that perspective that you have, I'm going to be bringing that out a little bit later in our conversation about that perspective, which has everything to do with trust. So, all right, my final question is always my fun question I ask everyone. Charles, what was your first concert and what was your best concert?
Oh gosh, first concert? You do understand I'm like kind of older, right?
No, you're not.
My first concert was a long time ago.
Okay.
Gosh, I didn't even remember. I was in high school. So it might have been a concert that I went to that was supposed to feature some, at the time, well-known rock band. That it was, and I went, and the warm-up act was Santana. And they blew everybody's mind. And by the time the main act came along, a lot of people were just going, okay, I just want to go home. I had such a great time listening to Santana.
I love it. Fantastic.
My best and favorite concert was Bruce Springsteen. Actually, my 2 favorite concerts were 2 Bruce Springsteen concerts that I went to back in the 80s.
Wow.
Just fabulous. He is such a great performer, and I love his music and his style. So, yeah, can't beat that for me.
Everywhere. That's so funny. Well, first of all, I'm just shocked that you didn't say like Beach Boys. I'm from the Philadelphia area.
Wait a minute. Now you are telling me that I'm
no. Well, we listen to the Beach Boys is played on the radio every day. But I'm from the Philadelphia area, which includes New Jersey.
I know.
Right. And everyone, their middle name is Bruce Springsteen. I mean, and it's so funny to hear someone from California say that. And everyone says the same things about his concerts. I've always felt that music is an equalizer. And I just think that people feel much more comfortable after we talk about the kind of music that we like. So anyway, well, hats off to you because I'm a fan of both. So that's great. All right. So Charles, I wanted to have you on as a guest on this Releading podcast. Your book, it's about trust being the key to effectiveness. And also my book, Reengage, is also about effectiveness. My first book, Relead, is about leadership effectiveness. And my second book, Reengage, is about intentional engagement, which leads to effectiveness. So I read your book a couple times. And speaking of that, everyone, this is Charles' book.
Well, actually, if I may.
Yeah, you have the later copy. I don't have the new one.
I have.
This is much prettier.
The 3rd edition, which
there you go.
This will be out on September 10th.
Yes. Okay.
The 3rd edition.
Charles, can you show everyone how thin it is?
Let's see if I can do that right this
See?
time.
Right? I love that. That's great. And on your in your new book, you also have the same insert?
No, that card is not there in the new book.
Oh,
So I'm trying to figure out a way to get that to people who might want one.
okay.
I think
Well,
it'll probably be on my website available in that, just as a download.
okay. So everyone, I read the book. So I opened the book and I had a little gift from the author. And that excited me because this is actually, you can pull this out and it has all the important information in this really expensive, glossy card, if you will, that you can tear out and leave on your desk. This is really important for people like me who are, I'm a note taker. So instead of me taking notes anyway, Charles, I'm bringing this up because again, if there, you have over 100,000 copies sold, so there are over 100,000 people and organizations that also have this version of it. But anyway, I do love the thinness of the book, and I like the fact that it was so easy to read and it was understandable. That's what I really appreciated, the message that you were giving. Okay, so I'm going to read something, and this is actually written either by you or perhaps your publisher. But I want to read this and see if you have anything to add to this. So if anyone here is hearing about Charles for the first time and trying to understand about the book and actually why you should buy the book, trust is an essential aspect of strong, authentic, and productive working relationships. But trust doesn't just happen. It takes attention to the words and the behaviors that affect trust. The Thin Book of Trust provides a simple, powerful framework and language for building, maintaining, and restoring trust. Filled with examples, it is designed to help readers pay attention to what matters to consistently build, maintain, and when necessary, restore strong trust in any complex, fast-paced, and demanding work environment. This to me summarizes what you do for a living and how you're able to impact and affect individuals and organizations. Is there anything that you want to add to that for maybe someone who's just meeting you for the first time?
I think that actually encapsulates what the book is attempting to do. My intention with the book is to get that across, to help people. Well, okay, let me just take it one step further. Specifically, what the book contains is a framework for trust building that allows people to think about what, when it says there, see if it says the same thing here. When I talk about being able to focus on, or I can't remember exactly what it said, but pay attention. So how do you attend to the words and actions that build trust and avoid those words, and actions, the language and actions that can damage trust? It really is valuable to have some kind of a framework to work from, to think about it, to pay attention in a particular useful way. And so that's what is kind of the centerpiece of the book, along with certain distinctions about trust that allow people to think about it in a useful way, and practices. Here's some things you can actually do to build trust and to maintain it, and in case it's been broken, restore it.
Right. And I like that. My theory in life, and I've always felt this way, it's don't tell me why, show me how. Now, I know I'm holding up your last edition, but this is a book that will do both. It will explain why it's important, but Charles actually shows you how to do that. Charles, would you just briefly, could you just introduce what your dimensions are so that the readers will understand, okay, this is what I need to look at in the book when I read it so that I can understand it and then implement it with myself or with my team?
Yeah, actually, let me start with the definition that I use, and then I'll use that to lead into the four the
Perfect.
four assessment domains. So I define trust, and this isn't, I didn't make this up. I kind of cleaned it up or made it more user friendly, if you will. But this is the definition that people do academic research on trust and write up their findings in peer-reviewed academic journals. This is kind of their definition, and I love it because it's just spot on. To trust is to choose to risk making something you value vulnerable to another person's actions.
Mm.
So, right up front, it says you're taking a risk. So then, how do you determine if the risk is worth it? I mean, if how big that risk is or how small that risk is, and realize that everybody else is also making that same kind of risk assessment based on your behavior. So they're looking at you saying, based on, if they're looking at me, is based on Charles's behavior, is it worth taking the risk? Um, worth taking the risk to make something I value vulnerable to him? Will he uphold or support what it is that I value, or will he damage it? So now let's take a look at how we make that risk assessment, right? So we make an assessment of risk to trust. And as Kim, you just said, the way I think about it is we make it in 4 different assessment domains. So there's a domain of care, which is the assessment that I can trust that you have my interests in mind, you intend good for me, you have my back, you're not going to undercut me, you're not going to embarrass me, you're not going to stab me in the back. So that's the domain of care, that I trust that you have my interests in mind as well as your own when you make decisions and take action.
Right.
Second domain is what I call sincerity, which is really kind of a combination of honesty, so I can believe what you say, and integrity, which is that when your actions are going to be in alignment with what you say. So that, and also what you say in the future will be in alignment with what you're saying now, unless you've changed your mind, in which case you'll share that with me. You won't just start behaving differently or saying different things without keeping me caught up to where you are. So I can trust, or I can trust that what you say is honest and true to the best of your ability to ensure that it is, and that you're going to walk your talk. Domain of the third assessment domain that I can assess risk in is reliability, which means very simply, you will meet the commitments that you make. So if you say, if I say, Kim, I'm going to have this report on your desk by the end of the day, Monday, it'll be there. Or if something were to happen such that I can't get it there, something that's out of my control, that I let you know as soon as I am aware that there's a problem. So that's the domain of reliability, keeping your specific commitments to each other. And then the final fourth domain, assessment domain, is competence, which is I assess that I can trust you have the experience, expertise, knowledge, skill set, resources to do either what you're saying you can do or to do what I'm asking you to do. And if you don't, that you'll actually acknowledge it and ask for help, ask for what you need. So those are the 4 ways, the domains in which we can make that risk assessment, which allows us to kind of take, rather than having this big, unclear, amorphous thing called trust, we can now think about, okay, if I'm assessing the risk of trusting this person, can I trust them in the domain of care? Will they have my back? Can I trust them in the domain of sincerity? Are they going to be honest and walk their talk? Can I trust that they'll meet the specific commitments they make to me? Can I trust that they're competent? And I may find that one of those domains I can't necessarily trust them consistently. Maybe they have a hard time. They struggle somehow to meet the specific commitments that they make. They follow. That doesn't mean that I can't trust them in the domain of sincerity or care or the other one, competence. But that I do need to take some care around, when that person makes a commitment to me, not just assuming that it's going to happen the way that I would expect it to happen. So I can have a conversation with them about that.
Right.
I have a way to narrow it down. I don't have to just go to them and say, I wouldn't have to just go to you and say, Kim, I'm having trouble trusting you. I can go say, Kim, the last 3 times that you committed to doing something, it didn't happen. At least it didn't happen in the time frame that you committed, or it didn't happen in the way that you committed it would happen. So let's have a conversation about that. Or, Kim, a couple of times now you've said something to me that turned out to be not quite true or accurate. Can we have a conversation about that? So having these 4 assessment domains helps me make that risk assessment when I'm considering trusting someone else. And it also, of course, allows me to show up in a trustworthy way to other people. So I can, say, especially, I can say something like, hey, for Kim, it's really important. Competence is really important. And so is walking my talk. So I sense that from just listening to how she talks. Yeah. And so for me, then, in relationship to Kim, I want to show up as trustworthy in all 4 domains, but I want to pay particular attention to being competent, or not claiming competence that I don't have.
Yes.
And I also want to be very careful to really check what I'm saying to make sure that it's as accurate as I possibly can be, so that she gets the sense that I'm being honest with her.
Right.
So
that, Charles, all of that is so well said. And I think what it's going to do for people who are, again, not familiar with you yet and haven't purchased your book, especially those who would use this book within the organization, what you just described is so important, because when we talk about trust, it's not a matter of just making a decision going in saying, I'm going to figure out how to trust him, or I don't trust him, and that's where it ends. What you provide is the language and the framework and the actual process. I mean, this is not hard. These 4 assessments, I mean, this is something that everyone can understand. And I think that listening to you explain that so well, and you just gave us the how. How would you approach someone and say, the last couple of times when I asked you to do this, it didn't happen. Let's have a conversation about that. That's the hard part. People stop at, I know I need to do that. How do I engage them? And what you provided was the language to do that. And in essence, you give them permission to do it. And then things happen, things change, and offer the positive. So I hope, and I know that you know this, but I'm hoping that you hear that a lot, Charles, about what it is that you do. It's such a service to other people, because it's not intuitive to walk into a dysfunctional team and figure out how to learn trust. There's nothing intuitive about that, because a lot of people don't realize there's a process for that. Correct?
Yeah. I like think back to when I was first working in a company where I needed to be able to build trust with my peers, my boss, and then once I started leading other people, the people who worked for me, and I really, I didn't have a any particular framework or way to think about it other than the basics. Okay, do what you say you're going to do, and
Right.
be honest, and things like that. But there are a lot of little ways in which we can um, uh, either say things or do things that others interpret as untrustworthy. That framework allows us to, or allowed me, once I learned the framework, allowed me to really pay attention to and focus on. Whereas when I was long before I learned the framework, I was kind of just, it was, chance really to a great extent. It was leaving it to chance, leaving it to what I did know how to do, which was pretty minimal. And the same thing with the people. Some people around me were better at it than that,
Mhm.
and other people were a lot worse than that at building trust, and had no clue what the kind of distrust that they were creating around them. I like to think that I was somewhere in the middle, not terrible, but certainly not as good as some of the people that I work with. But the point is that with a framework and with, particularly if I'm working with other people, with a common language, we can learn to be really exceptional trust builders.
Mm.
Not just building trust one on one, but also being able to create a culture, for example, in a team or even an entire company, where other people can build trust easily with each other. So
Yes.
everybody has that common language and the common framework so that they can talk about it, which is really essential to trust building, in my
Sure.
opinion.
That's it's so powerful what you just said. What I took away from the webinar that you were on recently, that it was, and I know this again from being a coach and also having just published a book about how important it is to see both sides, not just one side. But something that you said toward that, Charles, was that not only do we need to assess the other person for trustworthiness, that they need to assess us as well. That this is not one way. It must be both ways. But unless they have that common language, they don't even know where to begin. And you provide that common language
Yeah.
with your 4 assessments.
I wouldn't say that they don't know where to begin. I think we all know something. We all learn some aspects of trust building in both directions,
Mhm.
uh, but that's that only takes us so far.
Right.
If we really intend to build strong, high trust relationships, it does really help to have a common language, and it helps to have a framework to work from.
Right. Right. No, that I agree. I think one of the worst feelings for people who are leaders or influencers or doers, that when they feel toward what you just said, when they feel that something's not right, I mean, that's, you can't deny that feeling, but
Yeah.
again, people don't know what to do about it. They don't know that there's a process. They don't know that. But I think they're going to know it now after speaking with you. So I know that we're
Hopefully.
right. They will. Um, I know that we're getting close to time, but I have a question. So you're a famous and very successful author who also has this very long, decades long successful business and executive coaching. So for anyone that's watching this live now or will watch it next week when they're able to, what, with regard to trust, what should they do and what shouldn't they do when they go back to their desk and continue their day? Or on a Friday, what could or should they do on Monday?
Yeah. Good question. I think the one answer to that comes to mind is
Mhm.
that trust takes both intention and attention. And
Mm.
so the intention part comes first. I intend to be trustworthy. I intend to extend trust to others wisely. And then the attention part comes in figuring out where you need to attend to, what you need to attend to, what behaviors, what language, and so
Mhm.
on. So really focusing on where you want to um, attend
Mhm.
to trust building, but making it explicit, not just something that's in the background that'll happen or not. I'm a trustworthy guy, so of course, people will trust me. Well, take a look at that. Think about that one. It does help, again, to have the framework. So, yes, having that is valuable.
For the second time, I wrote that down. I wrote it down during your webinar, but also, again, having the intention and the attention to it is that's the ball game right there. That's that decision that we make in order to change situations so that it's more, because when we have trust, and I've heard you say this before, that your production increases and productivity increases, morale increases. I mean, it's such a win. So all that being said, I am just so happy to have had you on this podcast. And I will be talking about this for a while because I think that there's a solution out there, and it's not a hard solution, but we just have to do it. You've already broken it down into the different dimensions, the assessments, if you will. This is not hard to do, but we just need to do it. I'm a believer of your framework. I just think that the process is really important. So you have a very big fan in me, but I will also, as a coach, be using that. So I thank you for that. I thank you for sharing your wisdom today. I feel lighter learning all this information. I will always be a student. And I think that you've got a little professor thing going on too. So I definitely learned from you. So thank you for being on the Relead podcast. If you just want to hold your book up one more time, you're the new version. This is what everyone needs to look for on Amazon. And what do we talk about? I wrote it down. Amazon and Barnes & Noble internationally through Penguin Random House, The Thin Book of Trust, 3rd edition. We need to support Charles. He's already sold over 100,000 copies of his first 2 editions. And this book even has more information in it that we need to support that. But this is a solution that we can all use in our jobs. So thank you again, Charles. And one thing that I just want to say to everyone, when we have new information, when we become more learned through meeting successful authors like Charles, who have such an important message to share with all of us, that's why I always talk about releading. When we all need to pause. Everything changes, teams change, individuals change, we change. So we can't ever stay in the same place. It's really important for us to keep acquiescing to different changes. And one way that we do that is by reading books and by finding new ways that we can actually pivot towards, again, fortifying our skill sets through these new competencies, if you will. And also when we proceed, we're proceeding with purpose, and we actually feel different when we do that, and other people can sense that, which helps us be more motivational as leaders and as influencers. So you will have a new purpose once you read this book, when you go back as a leader with your team. I think that this is going to be something that you're going to be using for a long time. It can become habit very quickly. It's not a hard book to read, but we need to read it. So Charles, I wish you all the continued success in the world. I have to say that it was so nice when Charles sent me a copy of his book, and he put in here, for my new friend, Kim. So I do consider you a friend, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to be leaving this podcast until the next time with everyone. But just remember that whatever you do on your career journey or on your professional journey or personally, be anything but be effective. So until next time, go be effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.